Whatcom Literacy Council offers free services to adults in our community who ask for help with basic literacy skills to improve their English. Without strong literacy skills or proficiency in English, you cannot do the things that most of us take for granted, like read a bus schedule, get a job, or talk to your child's teacher. We work with about 100 volunteers every year, people who receive training and ongoing support from professional staff.
When I first met Yao, she was very shy and kind of afraid to speak in English. When she arrived in the US, she's having a hard time communicating with people around her.
Helping people learn English proactively targets known ethnic disparities in our community, where people who don't speak English are at an automatic disadvantage. We offer a variety of classes and services tailored to the unique needs of our students. We develop a learning plan based on the learner's own goals, which range from reading to their grandchildren, to getting a job, speaking with their landlord, navigating the school system for their children, or passing the U.S. citizenship exam.
Now that I've worked with her a few months, that she kind of has that confidence and really wanting to chat a lot in English. So that's kind of very rewarding for me, that she feels good about speaking in English.
The Whatcom Literacy Council has been around since 1983, and the demand for our program is stronger than ever. We serve over 800 adult learners each year. Our learners have many different backgrounds and experiences. Some have families in Whatcom County and have just moved here to be closer to them. Others have never been in a classroom before. 2/3 of these adults are immigrant or refugees representing countries that include Mexico, Ukraine, Vietnam, Venezuela, Somalia, and India. Some of these refugees are escaping violence or other traumas we cannot even imagine. For these people who are already marginalized by race and economic status, literacy can lead to homelessness or worse. Adults who participate in our programs have increased economic security and are less likely to be transient as they strengthen their literacy skills.
Part of the learning is I allow my students to share about their countries. That's a bonus for me, that I learn a lot about China. Yao is from China. You know, what she did there before and what she thinks about her country now. So that's really a big bonus for me.
Data shows that families with stronger literacy skills are more stable and have a higher income than those that don't. The Whatcom Literacy Council is a strong nonprofit that is working to meet the needs of our community. You can be a part of this project that helps our neighbors by volunteering your time to tutor or teach a class.
Whatcom Literacy Council is really a big part of our community. They give a lot of service to the community because there's a lot of people like me who are available and willing to help others, and there's a lot of new arrivals in our community who need help in learning English.
Or you can make a financial donation that funds the training and professional support we offer. Join us in this project with Neighbors Help Neighbors, build capacity and establishing long-term relationships between people of different social, economical, and cultural backgrounds.
Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. Welcome to the Literacy Breakfast with Nancy Pearl. So as you know, the Literacy Breakfast with Nancy Pearl is one of the signature fundraising events we hold here at the Whatcom Literacy Council. I am Paqui Paredes Mendez, and I'm a professor of Spanish literature and culture at Western Washington University in the Department of Modern and Classical Languages. And I speak to you today in my role as vice president of the Whatcom Literacy Council Board of Directors. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for being here and joining us. We are delighted that you're here today with us supporting the Whatcom Literacy Council and the work that it does in our community. Please know that all donations from today's event will support the free adult literacy programs we offer in the Whatcom, that we offer here in Whatcom County. Let me first start our program with a land acknowledgement. We are on the ancestral homeland of the Nooksack, Lummi, and other Coast Salish peoples. They have been stewards since time immemorial, respecting the land, river, and ocean with the understanding that everything is connected, related, and alive. We acknowledge the elders and their collective and individual plights and achievements. We consider the legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together today. And we pursue ongoing action to build lasting relationships and grow together so that all may prosper. It is a joy to be here with all of you at an in-person event after the several years of COVID lockdown. Thank you all for making the time to join us. We are seeing friends that we have not seen for a long time, and it's wonderful to feel the positive energy in this room. Let me share a special thank you to our Pulitzer sponsors, BP Cherry Point Refinery and Hempler's Foods, for helping us out in such a big way this morning, and to the many smaller businesses that came in with Newbery sponsorships. Thank you all. It is nice to see so many of our partner agencies here this morning. Our friends from Whatcom Community College are here in force. You can wave if you're there. All right, thank you. Also the folks at the Bellingham Technical College Foundation. You can wave wherever you are. I don't see you. All right, thank you. Rebecca Judd and the librarians from the Bellingham Public Library. Thank you. Director Christine Perkins and the librarians from the Whatcom County Library System. I've seen you all before. Thank you. And our good friends from Evergreen Goodwill. If you guys want, thank you, a full table over there. We truly appreciate everyone being here this morning to support our literacy programs. I'd also like to thank Village Books, right over there, for being here bright and early. Yes. It's great to have them make available the books that Nancy Pearl will be presenting to us. Our deepest gratitude to you all. So let me start with a quick update on what we have been up to here at the Whatcom Literacy Council. We are seeing a huge surge in demand for English language services, and we are working hard to be able to meet that demand. We are happy to report that we have placed a record number of trained volunteers in ESL classrooms at BTC and WCC this last few quarters. We are currently working with 3 school districts to offer classes to parents, as well as several businesses. It has been an exciting year, and we look forward to continuing our important role in creating social capital and helping our neighbors find a voice for themselves and their communities. Each year, we include in our program an award to a business or person who has helped out the Whatcom Literacy Council in a significant way. This year's Friend of Literacy award goes to Sophia Shang. Sophia, I'm not sure where you are. Oh, there you are. Okay. You can come up to the podium. I'll make you blush a little bit, but I want everybody to see you. Sophia is a Whatcom Community College faculty member for English for Speakers of Other Languages, or ESOL. She is our liaison with instructors at Whatcom who want help in their ESOL classrooms and coordinates where our volunteers are placed. These volunteers attend every class throughout the quarter and provide support to the instructor. It is a very rewarding program to participate in, as the volunteers see noticeable improvements in communication and self-confidence in the students in a very short period of time. For WCC, this program gives their students the extra attention they need to be successful. Thank you, Sophia, for all your good work collaborating with the Whatcom Literacy Council. And here's your award. Thank you. Thank you for all your work. All right. Each year, we take a moment to hear from people who have actually participated in one of our programs. And I know that for many of you, this is really the highlight of this event. I know it is for me. Our first success story is Jaime Gonzalez. Jaime owns the local coffee shop Coffee. with her husband, Oscar. And we are drinking their Colombian coffee this morning. Amy.
Good morning, buenos días. My name is Amy Gonzalez. I am originally from Colombia. I have been married with this handsome man, Oscar, for 22 years. He wrote for me this. We have 3 children, Antonella, 5 years old, Samuel, 12, no, 11 years old, and Luciana, 12 years old. We have, sorry, I'm nervous. We came to this country, Bellingham, 3 years ago. My English was really bad. I heard about the Whatcom Literacy Council, and I asked for a tutor to help me improve my English. Maggie became my tutor. We meet every week. It is so important for me to communicate in English. As a parent, I need to communicate with my children's teachers. As a business owner, I need to talk, sorry, with my customers. It has been very helpful to work with Maggie to improve my English. I am glad we have a place like a Whatcom Literacy Council in our community. I am jewelry designer. I have my own business, Fia Handmade, in downtown Bellingham, on Cornwall Avenue. It is inside coffee and a special Colombian coffee shop that we, my husband, ran 2 years ago. This morning, you are drinking the Colombian coffee that we sell. Thank you. Enjoy.
Thank you, Amy and Oscar. Wonderful story. Your English is beautiful. Thank you. Takes a lot of guts. Thank you. And thank you for the amazing coffee. It's a treat. Literacy is a platform for equity. UNESCO reminds us that, and I quote, literacy empowers and liberates people. Beyond its importance as part of the right to education, literacy improves lives by expanding capabilities, which in turn reduces poverty, increases participation in the labor market, and has positive effects on health and sustainable development, end quote. Indeed, providing access to literacy helps communities solve systemic socioeconomic problems like workforce development and poverty relief. In our own community in Whatcom County, the Whatcom Literacy Council provides key services that empower our learners to reach their personal and professional goals. We play a critical role in supporting recent immigrants and refugees who are learning English as a second language. This year, we have welcomed and supported refugees from Ukraine, Sudan, Afghanistan, and Somalia, for example. The services we provide to all of our adult learners help them gain confidence, independence, and equitable access to educational and professional opportunities. It is critical that we build a more literate population. That is exactly what the WLC does. But in order to perform our role to the best of our ability, we need your help. And I now turn the microphone over to my fellow board member, Tran Nguyen, to share her story. Tran.
Good morning, everyone. How are you this morning? So I'm holding my phone because of I have a phobia of public speaking. So I'm Trang Nguyen, and I'm a former learner at the Whatcom Literacy Council since the end of 2020. And my tutor was Mr. Keith Loken. So when Catherine, the director, reached out and asked me to be a learner speaker for today's event, I was hesitant because of my weakness in public speaking. However, I'm on stage right now, and thank you, Catherine, for allowing me and suggesting me using my pre-printed speech. So let me tell you a bit about my background and what brought me to WLC. I'm from Vietnam, and I came here at the end of 2019 to do a post-baccalaureate program in accounting at Western Washington University. So it's called a second degree, so-called in layman term. This new idea made me truly excited. Although I have been using English as a business language at my former job, this is my first time using American English extensively. After the first few days at school, my excitement was replaced with the wariness of the intensity of schoolwork, fast-speaking speed environment, and confused look when I spoke. I found out that speaking English with a foreign accent is a barrier for the American ears. Besides that, on my end, I only could get about 50% of the lecture. So things outside of class was not brighter. After 1 month in Bellingham, I did not make any new friends or acquaintance. So I talked to my sister, who then suggested me to sign up for a WLC tutor program. And after a week, I received a call from Carrie, a former coordinator at the WLC, to discuss my English efficiency and my my class expectations. Carrie put me in the waiting list as the search for an open spot started. So I was paired with Mr. Keith Loken in October 2020, so 1 year after I signed up for the program. You see how popular the program at WLC is. So at that time, COVID-19 was still at its height, and social distancing was still in place. And we decided to meet over Google Meet, that's an online platform, free access to all people, and we use it as a medium to meet for our weekly lesson. At first, we work on pronunciation because I found that that's my really weakness that I want to improve on. So we use a program called Pronunciation website, and my tutor Kit was extremely patient, helping me with practicing and reaching certain, working on certain letters that I'm struggling with, like R or L. So when Miss Lauren, the current coordinator, came on board, she reached out and scheduled session with both Keith and I, and show us online resources pertaining to pronunciation. She also sent us pronunciation book as a reference guide. She explained ways that I could make myself understood without worrying too much about pronunciation. And her explanation was really help. It lift the burden off my shoulder and make me confident in speaking or engaging with in conversation with other people. Later on, I also wanted to improve my knowledge on different topics, so through readings and writing. So Mr. Keith selected articles from magazines including Smithsonian, The Atlantic, and used them as material for discussion and writing practice. We also did quickly jumble words. We also work on like jumble word to our lesson, thinking that it could help improve my brain memory. So fast forward, I wrap up my coursework with an internship with a local CPA firm, and which eventually turned into a full-time employment in 2022. Since then, I've been focusing on building my knowledge in the US taxation and preparing for CPA exams. So from a frustrated new student at the end of 2019, the weekly lesson with my tutor and the effective support from Miss Lauren have helped building up the confidence for my job interview, my daily interaction with people around me. I also went on pursuing a master's degree in professional accounting at the University of University of Washington in Tacoma. So I wanted to take these opportunities to thank you, Mr. Keith, Miss Lauren, for their time and efforts, for their guidance over the past 3 years. I'm also grateful for the opportunity to work with WLC. This opportunity cannot happen without the continuous support from donors. Their contribution have made significant change in the life of newcomers like me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Trang. Amazing, amazing stories of challenges, overcoming those challenges, perseverance, and what the power of literacy can do. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Trang, for sharing it with us. Let's give them another round of applause. So Trang already told you we cannot do this without your help. This is our signature, most important fundraising event of the year. It is crucial for our services to be able to continue and for us to be able to do our job, that we raise as many funds as we can. So of course, you know what's coming now. Now it's the time to ask for your help. Please make a donation today to the Whatcom Literacy Council. I will ask you, because that's my role here, to be as generous as you possibly can, because we will appreciate it, we will appreciate you, and every dollar will go to funding our services. On the table, in front of you, in case you're wondering, how do I make a donation? We are making it very easy for you. Multiple ways to make a donation. On the table in front of you is a small envelope where you can place a check or write down your credit card information. Do not worry. We black out and shred each envelope after we run the donation. And we do not share our data with anyone else. If you're home, please make your check out to the Whatcom Literacy Council and snail mail it to P.O. Box 1292, Bellingham, Washington 98227, and you'll be able to follow all of this information on the screen. We also take Venmo, and our handle at Venmo is at Whatcom Literacy with a capital W. Or there is a QR code on your table that will take you to our website at www.whatcomliteracy.org to make a gift. We really, really love you if you can sign up to make a monthly donation because that helps us with our cash flow, and hopefully that is easier on your wallet. Again, please make a generous donation. Be as generous as you can. Remember these wonderful stories that are only possible because of that generosity. Your support will not only help an adult, it will also have a positive impact on their family, employer, and the community at large. Thank you. And now it's time to hear from our guest speaker, Nancy Pearl. Nancy Pearl is a librarian, best-selling author, literary critic, and the former executive director of the Washington Center for the Book at Seattle Public Library. Her prolific reading and her knowledge of books and literature have made her famous. In addition to the 4 books in the Book Lust series, she's the author of the novel George and Lizzie and the Writer's Library, a collection of interviews with authors about the books they love, co-written with Jeff Schwager. She regularly appears on public radio recommending books and interviewing authors. Note that you can catch these on BTC, the City of Bellingham's free TV channel that is streaming us right now. She's the author of a novel and a memoir and has been given so many awards, I do not really have time to read the entire list. Suffice it to say that she was named the 2011 Librarian of the Year by Library Journal and given the 2021 Librarian Award for Outstanding Service to the American literary community, a Lifetime Achievement Award. We are sad that Nancy has recently been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that makes it impossible for her to attend any event in person. Knowing how important this breakfast is for the Whatcom Literacy Council, she has taken the time to prepare a video with her book recommendations for this year. These books are on the lists on your tables. And Village Books has these titles for sale right here on that table. We ask that you wait until Nancy's done with her presentation before you go over to buy books. Thank you.
Hello, I'm so sorry I can't be with you in person today. I was so looking forward to coming up to Bellingham again. But as the saying goes, what is it? Man proposes and God disposes. So I wanted to start today with a poem because I know that many of us are finding ourselves at that time of our life where sometimes we just can't think of the correct word, or, there's, you have a word on the tip of your tongue, but you just can't bring it up. And this is a poem for us. It's called Forgetfulness by Billy Collins. It's in one of his collections. Highly recommend all of his books. They're just wonderful. So this is how it goes. The name of the author is the first to go, followed obediently by the title, the plot, the heartbreaking conclusion, the entire novel, which suddenly becomes one you have never read, never even heard of. As if one by one, the memories you used to harbor decided to retire to the southern hemisphere of the brain, to a little fishing village where there are no phones. Long ago, you kissed the names of the 9 muses goodbye and watched the quadratic equation pack its bag. And even now, as you memorize the order of the planets, something else is slipping away. A state flower, perhaps, the address of an uncle, the capital of Paraguay. Whatever it is you are struggling to remember, it is not poised on the tip of your tongue or even lurking in some obscure corner of your spleen. It is floated away down a dark mythological river whose name begins with an L, as far as you can recall, well on your own way to oblivion, where you will join those who have even forgotten how to swim and how to ride a bicycle. No wonder you rise in the middle of the night to look up the date of a famous battle in a book on war. No wonder the moon in the window seems to have drifted out of a love poem that you used to know by heart. That's Forgetfulness by Billy Collins. Check out his books, too. So I have a long list and 30 minutes to talk about them, so I'm going to do it really quickly. I love all these books. They're older titles, they're newer titles. I think I only have one nonfiction book, which is a reflection of what I've been reading and what I've wanted to read, which is, of course, what these lists are made of. I know that the booksellers at Village Books can help you find lots of great nonfiction, and they're happy to do so, of course. So the first book on the list is The Alice Network, and this is by Kate Quinn. I haven't read her historical novel set in ancient Rome, but the four she set around World War II are great, and I can't wait for the new one. The Alice Network, and they're terrific audiobooks, good plots, people you care about. The Rose Code is set at Bletchley Park. The Diamond Eye is based on real events during the period when Russia was trying to persuade the U.S. to send troops to Europe. And the Alice Network is about a spy network led by women deep in occupied France. It's a keeper. Don't miss these. The next book on the list is by Guy Gavriel Kay, who is one of my all-time favorite authors. I've interviewed him many, many times, and we always have a good time talking about the kind of books that he writes and why I like him so much and why he's so popular around the world. Now, Guy Gavriel Kay's novels are shelved with the science fiction and fantasy books in bookstores and libraries, but really they're historical fiction that are set in slightly altered real places: Byzantium, Renaissance, Reconquista Spain, and the fantasy is really minimal. Now it's there. I don't want to tell you it isn't. It's there, but I do think that even people who don't love fantasy or haven't tried fantasy recently, but do love historical fiction, will enjoy these. All the Seas of the World is his most recent book. And when we talked about it, what struck me about this book and made me go back and think about all of his earlier novels is how so many of his books feature strong women characters. My two faves of all his titles are The Lions of Al-Rasan and All the Seas of the World. The audiobook is read by Simon Vance. It's great. And what Guy Gavriel Kay is asking is, are our lives determined by fate, or is our life just a series of random events that will shape our lives in the past and today? Wow, love his books. Berlin Game is the next book on the list, and I was managing, it's the beginning of a set of 3 different trilogies by Len Deighton. And I was managing a bookstore in Tulsa when Deighton's book came out. And because I am and was back then a huge fan of spy fiction, it was an absolutely wonderful read. Then, to my shock and unhappiness, we had to wait a year or more till the sequel, Mexico Set, was brought out in the United States, and another year or so for London Match to come into the States before we finally discover who the Russian agent, the traitor high up in MI6, really is. Now, the whole trilogy is reprinted, and the following trilogies, all also featuring Bernard Sampson. Even if they're not available right now, you will not have to wait a year for them, I hope. When November comes, late October, November comes, or, if you have a lot going on in your life and you just want something really light and and still nicely written. You want to meet some good characters, but you want to pretty much be sure that the ending is not going to be sad. I would recommend The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. Now, I had not, I have never heard of Catherine Center. I had never read any of her books, and she is a very, writer who brings out a lot of novels and very, very popular. What happened was that my husband, who is also an audiobook aficionado, was looking for something to read, and this book was available, and he checked it out. And it is, I have to say, the perfect audiobook for someone wanting a light, nicely written, nicely read audiobook. The characters are absolutely a delight. Now, I have to be honest, I have tried others by her, and I haven't been able to get into them, but this one was just what I needed when I read it. And that's true when my husband listened to it too. We both just had a great time enjoying this book. It made a nice break. So that's The Bodyguard. I'll be interested if you read it and you try some of the other books and see what you think. That would be interesting to talk about. The next book on the list couldn't be more different from Catherine Center's books, Chain Gang All-Stars by Nana Kwame Adjei-Brenyah. It is a finalist for the National Book Awards, which by the time you hear me talk, we will know who won. At this point, I don't know who won, but I think Chain Gang All-Stars ought to win. It is probably the best way of describing it is that it's Hunger Games, but for adults. This is satire, I might even say vicious satire, on the level of Jonathan Swift's A Modest Proposal. It deals with America's obsession with incarceration, our obsession with private prisons, and our obsession with blood sports. It is the story of two women gladiators who are going to fight to the death for the ultimate prize, which is release from prison. This is not an easy book to read, in the sense that there's a lot going on. You're going to care about the characters. You're going to shake your head in disbelief at the criminal action penal entertainment, which puts on these gladiatorial bouts. And you're going to start thinking, I think, about, is this where we really want to be as a country? But it is not the kind of book that is going, shaking its fist at you and saying, no, you're thinking wrongly. It's a book that is so well written and so interesting that despite what I found is, despite wanting to stop at some points, I was just compelled to go on. The next book, Cheneyville, or Cheneyville, I'm not sure even how to pronounce it, most embarrassingly, is Paulette Giles' newest novel. And of course, Paulette Giles really is one of our best Western writers, Western historians, especially most recently. News of the World was so popular. Simon the Fiddler was so popular. But my favorite of her books has always been The Color of Lightning. But this one is just great as well. It's set in the last awful days of the Civil War and immediately afterwards. And it opens in a hospital in Virginia where John Cheneyville, let's call him that, who fought for the Union, tries to recover from a devastating head wound. Finally, he's well enough to go back to Missouri, where he's from, where his family lives, where they own a big, not exactly a plantation, but you could call it that, I suppose. But he goes home to Missouri, where there's more tragedy. And that tragedy causes John to set out to find a murderer, a trip which will take him throughout the devastated South, the South that's been devastated by the war. Paulette Giles is absolutely brilliant at character development, and her writing is, I think maybe the best word is glorious. There's violence and there's revenge, but there's also the beginning of a love story. And just for a little added treat, how the development of the telegraph began to modernize the world. What a, and when you read this, I'm imploring you to go back and read The Color of Lightning, because it is another just spectacular novel. So that's Paulette Giles, one of my all-time really favorite authors. Now, when I talk about this next book, Day's Work, by Chris Batchelder and his wife, Jennifer Halder. Chris Batchelder is a professor at the University of Cincinnati. His wife is a poet, and they wrote Day's Work, which is labeled a novel. But I have to think there's a lot more memoir in it than one. I mean, I don't see why it's called a novel. I actually read it as a memoir with great pleasure. In fact, this book, Day's Work, is my favorite book of the year. Now, when I tell you what it's about, it's one of those books where the description is impossible to do, and I'm going to, give you some hints about what it's about, and I think with each hint you're going to exit off your list, but I would urge you to pick it up and read it, because it is, again, just a fascinating memoir or novel, whatever you want to call it. So this is a book about Herman Melville, and it's a book about Moby Dick. It's that's gonna like I was assigned Moby Dick in high school, and I never read it, though I did pass the test and the class. So that's gonna, why would I want to read a book about Herman Melville? A novel about Herman Melville, how weird. Then I'm going to tell you that it's also about Nathaniel Hawthorne. Now, it happens to be the case that we were also assigned The House of Seven Gables or The Scarlet Letter, one of those two, in my English class in high school, and I never read it. But as I already said, I did pass the class. And then, to make matters even worse, it's set during the height of the pandemic, where Chris and Jennifer's children are going to school from home. In the middle of it, in the middle of the book, Chris Batchelder gets COVID and has to isolate in their basement. But it's a book that's written in small paragraphs, and each paragraph has a little fact about Melville, about writing his books. It's about a little fact about Hawthorne, and it has, and the reach of Melville is so great that almost every writer, the famous writer that you can think of, was a fan of Melville's work. Everyone from, for example, Toni Morrison to John Cheever, and almost everyone in between. It's a book that has poetry in it, quotes different poets, and each little factoid is just a treat to read. Did you know, for example, that Emily Dickinson owned a Newfoundland dog? I did not. And one of the things that you'll just be amazed at, as I was, I'm sure, is how the two of them did all of this research without leaving their home, including virtually visiting an archive and looking at the materials that they had. One of the things that we learn, I just want to give you a little quote. One of the things that we learn is that Melville's oldest son committed suicide. And there's a poem that they quote in this book, Chris and Jennifer, by Robert Hass. And the quote is, "It's brutal the way some lives seem to work and some don't." So as I said, Day's Work is my book of the year. The next book is it really two books. I'm going to do them together, although one appears here, Dreaming in Cuban, alphabetically, and then Vanishing Maps is at the bottom of the list. But these two really go together. Cristina Garcia, a Cuban-American writer, originally published Dreaming in Cuban in 1992, and it just was wonderfully reviewed. People loved it. Believe it was a finalist for one of the big awards. And it's about 3 generations of the Del Pino family, focusing on the matriarch, Celia, and her daughter Lourdes, and their lives through the tumultuous years of the Cuban Revolution and all of that political and social turmoil that Cuban Revolution and the and Fidel Castro's rise to power, what that caused in Cuba. It takes place from the 1930s all the way to the early 1990s, when it was published. It's a book that, like many South American writers, is filled with magic realism, or at least that's what we call it. But when I interviewed Cristina Garcia recently, and if you Google Cristina Garcia and Nancy Pearl, you could watch that interview. I prefer the term elastic realism. So what she's doing is writing a novel that's real with little bits of whimsy or even fantasy here and there, but it's really bookended by all of this realism. Celia's a wonderful character. She is a lifetime supporter of Fidel Castro, and this is really her story. Now, Vanishing Maps, which was just published, so we're talking like 30 years later, Cristina Garcia brought back those characters, Celia, her grandchildren, and even her children, and then even the next generation, her grandchildren. And it's set mainly in Berlin, but also Russia. And it's showing, really like so many of my favorite novels, how the past still has its impact, still has its hold on the present. Now, the next book is by Percival Everett, a really Black intellectual writer. It's called Erasure. It was published in 2001. It's getting a lot of play now, justifiably. I remember reading it in 2001 and just thinking it was brilliant. It was made into the film this year, American Fiction, which I have not seen. I'm not a big movie person, but it got good reviews, I can say that. This is another excellent satire. So, Black intellectual novelist, does that sound familiar? A little like Percival Everett. Black intellectual novelist Thelonious Monk Ellison writes critically acclaimed books, but they're probably little read or purchased because his publisher turns down his latest novel. What the public wants, he discovers, is obviously another novel set in the ghetto. So for fun, he writes one, which we read in the book, and it is published under a pseudonym. Of course, as things go, and because Monk is, a well-regarded, as I said, intellectual writer, he is one of the judges for the National Book Award. And his book, this ghetto novel, is nominated for the National Book Award, for which he is a fiction judge. This is a book about race. It's a book about literature. It's a book about how we deal with, or how we dealt with, particularly back in 2001, the inequalities in the publishing industry. And I remember at one point in the book, Monk says, do you suppose if I write a book about plumbing, how to fix toilets, they would put it with African American literature in the libraries and bookstores, which I always thought was an interesting way of making us look at that kind of thing. The next book, and I'm going to start hurrying. Nancy Hopkins, MIT, and the Fight for Women in Science. This story starts in 1963 when Nancy Hopkins heard a lecture by James Watson that would really influence the direction of her life's work in genetics, and how 30 years later, a group of women scientists at MIT decided that it was time to fight for equality for all women in science. This is one of two nonfiction books. I thought there was just one. I really like books that take a group of women, or a group of people, but in this case it's women, and show how their work together accomplishes something that working by themselves wouldn't work at all. The next book, Gallop Toward the Sun, Tecumseh and William Henry Harrison's Struggle for the Destiny of a Nation, is by Peter Stark. You might be familiar with Peter Stark. I think several years ago when his book Astoria came out, which I just loved, of John Jacob Astor's founding of Astoria, I thought it was just, great popular history. And this one is equally good. Gallop Toward the Sun, really, here's how I would understand it. If you like Tim Egan's A Fever in the Heartland, or if you liked David Grann's Killers of the Flower Moon, Stark's book about Tecumseh, the great Native leader, and William Henry Harrison, of the famous Tippecanoe and Tyler II, shortest term in office because he died soon after the inauguration from a cold he caught there. Peter Stark's book will give you all the background to what led up to the events in both those books. Harrison was elected because he was the hero of the day, but as we see in this book, Tecumseh was the real hero. Peter Stark is one of my favorite popular history writers, and all of his books are really well worth reading. One of my favorite people in the literary world is Luis Alberto Urrea, and his new book, Goodnight, Irene, is so interesting and perfect for readers who are interested in kind of little known facts about American history. And Luis was one of my favorite interviews that Jeff Schwager and I did for the Writers' Library, in which he talked to us about his parents' marriage and its effect on him and its effect on his reading life. Luis fictionalized his father's family in his immediately previous book, The House of Broken Angels. And in his newest book, he looks at his mother's life during World War II. In World War II, Irene is in General Patton's army as part of the Red Cross. She is a hostess at what were then called clubmobiles. These clubmobiles were in Europe, and they offered coffee and company to the soldiers before they march off to fight. This is one of those books that it's about women's friendship, it's about bravery, and if I were to describe Luis Urrea in a couple of words, I would call him one of the most generous writers that you can read. Now, Hestia Strikes a Match is another book that might not sound very appealing. I would because I'm not going to do a good job describing it, but I would encourage you to pick it up and try it. It's very smart writing, it's very funny, and it's very thought-provoking. It's set in a slightly altered country where we live, with just a few, which we will recognize when we read the book, but with just a few changes. We are, in the book, we are in the middle of a civil war between the North and the South. The main character is 40-something, and even though this war is going on, it's not army versus army. It's mostly what's happening is domestic terrorism. But this Hestia, the main character, is looking for love, and the way she's looking for love is using dating apps. Her husband has left a few years ago to fight for the North, and Hestia has no idea what's happening to him. Her parents are what they would believe is good liberals. What we might want to read it as is, well, you have to read the book to be introduced to her parents, both historians, academic historians, which is why her name is Hestia. I love that Hestia is in her 40s and obviously still has a good life ahead of her. The next book is On the Rooftop. And this is, first of all, I love books about mothers and daughters. So I was inclined to really like this book a lot. And second of all, I went to the same high school at almost the same time that Diana Ross did. And it was a huge urban high school in Detroit. So, of course, we didn't know one another at all. But later on, when I was a bookmobile librarian in Detroit, the bookmobile would go to the Brewster Douglass housing projects where Diana Ross grew up. And the Brewster Douglass is one of the, in Detroit, it was back then in the late 60s, early 70s, one of the most, just not an easy place to grow up, as most housing projects in my I believe aren't, probably not. But this is the story of a mother and her 3 children. And here's a quote from the book. Vivian didn't mourn St. Francisville, Louisiana. On the contrary, her memories kept watch against nostalgia. That describes Vivian to a T. So Vivian is both the mother and the manager of her 3 talented daughters, Ruth, Esther, and Chloe, during the 1950s in San Francisco. And they're a trio of singers, a la the Supremes, and the mother and the daughters really have different expectations and desires and plans for their future. And I love books like that. So don't miss On the Rooftop. Lastly, I got a couple more. Okay, the next book, it won the Booker Prize, won an American writer, Paul Beatty, The Sellout, and I'm just going to read the opening paragraph. This is another satire. It's filled with irony and humor and pain. So here's the quote. This is how the book opens. This may be hard to believe coming from a black man, but I've never stolen anything, never cheated on my taxes or at cards, never snuck into the movies or failed to give back the extra change to a drugstore cashier, indifferent to the ways of mercantilism and minimum wage expectations. I've never burgled a house, held up a liquor store, never boarded a crowded bus or subway car, sat in the seat reserved for the elderly, pulled out my gigantic penis, and masturbated to satisfaction with a perverted yet somehow crestfallen look on my face. But here I am, in the cavernous chambers of the Supreme Court of the United States of America, my car illegally and somewhat ironically parked on Constitution Avenue, my hands cuffed and crossed behind my back, my right to remain silent long since waived and said goodbye to as I sit in a thickly padded chair that, much like this country, isn't as comfortable as it looks. What a terrific novel. Okay, Wednesday's Child by Yi-Yun Lee. This is a collection of stories. You're probably a terrific collection of stories. You, if you're a New Yorker reader, you might, you're no doubt familiar with Yi-Yun Lee's work because she's in the New Yorker fairly frequently. These stories are marked by their lack of sentimentality. They deal with hard issues, loss, grief, difficulty of making connections between people, and the writing is lovely. I highly recommend this collection of short stories. When I first read it, I thought, oh, this is a collection of short stories written by an adult. This is a grown-up collection of short stories, and I still feel that way. The last new book that I want to point out is Seattle author and illustrator Julie Pashkis's new book called Zigzag, which is a picture book about an alligator who loves words so much that he often tastes them, often to the point that his vowels disappear, and it's up to us, the reader, to get them back. The folks at Village Books listed two of my other favorite books. So I'll just briefly say Library Girl is a picture book biography of a little girl who loved to read and grew up and became a librarian. And George and Lizzie, of course, is my novel, which I sometimes wish had not been published because I would love to keep on writing about George and Lizzie. So thank you very much. I hope everyone has a healthy, happy holiday season and 2024. Thanks so much.
So thank you, Nancy Pearl, for your ongoing support of the Whatcom Literacy Council. We are all so very sorry that she could not be here in person. If you would like to write to her a get well note, you all have little blank cards on your table. Some are green, some are blue. We will collect the notes and send them to Nancy so that she knows how much we love and miss her. I also want to thank the staff of the Whatcom Literacy Council. Catherine Freimond, our executive director, Tammy Johnson, associate director, and the rest of the staff. You're here today, you're here for an hour. Everything seems so easy. It takes months of work to make this happen, and it's all their work. So thank you. Nancy's list of recommended titles will be posted on our webpage. And all of them can be ordered through Village Books, or you can get them right there. I want to wish you all a good day. I want to say thank you again. Donate if you haven't done it yet. Get your books. And we at the Whatcom Literacy Council also wish you happy Thanksgiving, happy holidays, and a happy 2024.